the nature of music is not that it's continual, unless you are maybe dealing with dance, techno, EDM, something like that. The nature of music is this: there are always going to be periods of rest or silence in there. And so to be able to understand how this concept manifests itself within the parameters of a piece is very important. You don't want to overwhelm the listener by creating a wall of sound. Again, this is just in general. There are those type of people who love walls of sound and they love to be bombarded with a lot of notes all at once, but that's something else. But if you are going to create ups and downs in the music and flowing sense in the music, you're going to eventually have some parts where people will be resting. Another reason, extremely important for the beginning composer or arranger to consider, is the use of a rest is essential with those instruments that are used to resting. The first most important use of the rest for instruments that are used to resting is for instruments that require you to breathe in order to play. So that means vocalists, woodwind instruments, and brass instruments. Or you can say wind instruments altogether. Wind instruments is the total classification of any instrument that needs to be breathed into, whether it's a flute or a tuba. So these instruments have to rest. Why? Because during those periods of silence, they need to take a breath. They can only play for so long until they run out of breath, and then they will need to take a breath again. So it's very important to keep this in mind as you're writing. And different instruments can go longer with less breath. A sax player doesn't have to use too much breath, so he can play long passages in between each one of his breaths. So he doesn't necessarily need that many rests if you don't want. Whereas a tuba player or a flute player it doesn't matter about the size, it just matters about the amount of air that needs to be passed through the instrument. The tuba and the flute both require that a lot of air pass through them. So they cannot play for extended periods of time without being able to take a breath. So that's something that you need to keep in mind when you are writing. Another use for the rest could be with string players. Holding a string instrument up in the position where you play it is very hard on the body. You can't just keep that up indefinitely for hours and hours. Eventually, a string player also needs a rest. They need to be able to put down their instrument on their lap and just sit back and let all their muscles relax for a minute. And then they can pick it up again and continue on. So these are some examples of the importance of the use of the rest.